The night was calm, the kind of quiet that made the hum of crickets and the occasional rustle of leaves sound louder than usual. Outside Chicago, on a stretch of road surrounded by tall trees and empty fields, Officer Kevin Doyle sat in his patrol car. His eyes scanned the darkness through the windshield, searching for anything out of place. He liked working nights. It gave him a sense of control, like he was the only one awake while everyone else slept. But tonight felt different. Something about the stillness made him uneasy, as if something big was waiting to happen. Doyle tapped, his fingers on the steering wheel, letting his mind wander. He thought about his day, the calls he had answered earlier, and how frustrating it was to deal with people who didn't seem to respect authority. Then, just as he was about to turn on the radio, headlights appeared in the distance. A sleek, black sedan approached, moving smoothly but slightly faster than the speed limit allowed. Doyle squinted at the car, his instincts kicking in. "That's it," he muttered under his breath. "Let's see what you're up to." He flipped on the flashing lights and pulled out behind the sedan. The driver slowed down and moved to the side of the road, pulling over without hesitation. Doyle grabbed his flashlight and stepped out of the patrol car. As he walked toward the sedan, he noticed the driver, a black woman with her hair tied back neatly. She looked composed, almost too calm for someone being pulled over late at night. That alone made him suspicious. "License and registration, please," Doyle said, shining the flashlight into the car. His tone was firm, authoritative. He watched as the woman reached into her purse and then handed him her documents. Her name was Maya Johnson, according to the license. The registration matched the car. Everything seemed in order, but something about her demeanor bothered him. She wasn't nervous or defensive like most people would be in this situation. Instead, she met his gaze steadily, her expression unreadable. "Is there a problem, officer?" Maya asked politely. Her voice was smooth, confident. It caught Doyle off guard for a moment, but he quickly shook it off. "You were speeding," he replied curtly. "And this is a pretty fancy car for these parts. Where are you heading?" Maya hesitated for a fraction of a second before answering. "I'm visiting family nearby. My cousin lives a few miles from here." Doyle raised an eyebrow. "Family, huh? What's their address?" She gave him the information without hesitation, but Doyle wasn't satisfied. There was something about her answers, too rehearsed, too perfect, that set off alarm bells in his head. He leaned closer to the window, narrowing his eyes. "You sure you own this car? Looks expensive for someone like you." The words hung in the air between them. Maya's jaw tightened ever so slightly, but she kept her composure. "Yes, I own it. Is there anything else you need, officer?" Her calm response irritated him even more. He couldn't put his finger on why, but he felt certain she was hiding something. Maybe it was the way she spoke, so poised, so educated, or maybe it was the fact that she didn't fit his idea of who should be driving a luxury car in this neighborhood. Whatever it was, it fueled his suspicion. "Well, let's just make sure everything checks out," Doyle said, stepping back. "Stay right here." He returned to his patrol car and ran her information through the system. To his frustration, nothing unusual came up. No outstanding warrants, no criminal record. Just a clean license belonging to a woman named Maya Johnson. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. When he went back to her car, he decided to push harder. "Mind if I take a look inside your vehicle?" he asked, already reaching for the door handle. Maya's hand shot out to stop him. "Actually, I do mind. You don't have probable cause to search my car, officer. I've cooperated fully, and I haven't broken any laws." Her words stopped him in his tracks. For a brief moment, he considered backing off, but then pride took over. Who did she think she was, talking to him like that? Did she really believe she could tell him what he could and couldn't do? "I'll decide what's necessary here," Doyle snapped, yanking open the door. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am." Maya sighed quietly, unbuckling her seatbelt. She stepped out slowly, keeping her movements deliberate. Doyle gestured for her to stand near the front of the car while he began searching inside. He rummaged through the glove compartment, checked under the seats, and finally opened the trunk. At first glance, it seemed ordinary. Just some spare clothes, a gym bag, and a toolbox. But then he spotted something unusual tucked beneath the spare tire. A metallic case with strange symbols etched into its surface. "What's this?" Doyle demanded, holding it up. Maya crossed her arms, her patience wearing thin. "That's none of your concern, officer. Please put it back." But Doyle ignored her, examining the case more closely. It was unlike anything he'd ever seen. The symbols glowed faintly in the dim light, pulsing with an otherworldly energy. He glanced at Maya, expecting her to explain, but she remained silent. "This isn't yours, is it?" he accused, pointing the flashlight at her. "Stolen property? Or maybe something worse?" Maya clenched her fists, knowing she had two choices: reveal her true identity or risk escalating the situation further. She chose diplomacy, for now. "Officer, I assure you that case contains sensitive materials related to my work. If you continue this line of questioning, we'll both regret it," Doyle scoffed. "Your work? Lady, you're not fooling anyone. This whole thing reeks of trouble." He turned away, muttering under his breath about people like her thinking they were above the law. Unbeknownst to him, Maya had already activated a small recording device hidden in her phone. Every word he said, every move he made was being documented. She knew exactly who she was dealing with, a man whose biases blinded him to reason. And though she wanted nothing more than to end the encounter peacefully, she also knew that moments like these had consequences far beyond either of them. As Doyle continued inspecting the mysterious case, oblivious to its significance, Maya stood, silently watching the scene unfold. She wondered how many others like him were out there, clinging to outdated beliefs and prejudices, unwilling to see the world as it truly was. But tonight, whether he realized it or not, his actions might bring humanity face to face with forces beyond comprehension. The tension in the air grew thicker with each passing second. Neither of them knew it yet, but this simple traffic stop was about to spiral into something neither could have imagined. Doyle held the metallic case in his hands, turning it over as if trying to decipher its purpose. The strange symbols etched into its surface seemed to glow faintly under the dim light of his flashlight. He glanced at Maya, who stood near the front of her car with her arms crossed. Her expression was calm, but there was a sharpness in her eyes that made him uneasy. "What is this thing?" Doyle demanded again, shaking the case slightly for emphasis. "You're not getting out of this by staying quiet, lady." Maya took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. She knew she couldn't reveal too much, not yet, but she also needed to regain some control over the situation. "Officer, I've already told you that case contains sensitive materials related to my work. If you open it without proper authorization, there could be serious consequences." "Serious consequences?" Doyle laughed bitterly. "You think I'm going to fall for that? This looks like something stolen. Or worse. Maybe you're involved in something illegal." Maya's patience was wearing thin. She had dealt with difficult people before, but Doyle's stubborn refusal to listen was testing her limits. Still, she forced herself to stay composed. "If you'd like, I can provide credentials that will explain everything," she said evenly. Doyle smirked. "Credentials? Sure, let's see them. But don't try to pull anything funny." Maya reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small leather wallet. Inside was an identification card with her photo, name, and title. Lieutenant Maya Johnson, Advanced Tactical Division, ATD. She handed it to Doyle, who studied it skeptically. "This doesn't look real," he muttered after a moment. "Advanced Tactical Division? Never heard of it." "That's because it's classified," Maya replied, her tone firm but measured. "My division handles matters of national security. I'm asking you to trust me when I say this isn't something you want to get involved in." But Doyle wasn't convinced. In fact, her explanation only made him more suspicious. Classified? National security? It sounded like nonsense to him, story made up to cover whatever shady business she was really involved in. "Nice try," he said, tossing the ID back at her. "You expect me to believe you're some kind of secret agent?" Before Maya could respond, the sound of another police car approaching broke the tension. Backup had arrived. 2 officers stepped out, one woman named Rachel Gomez and one man named Eric Hayes. They approached cautiously, taking in the scene. "What's going on here?" Rachel asked, looking from Doyle to Maya. Doyle gestured toward Maya. "I pulled her over for speeding, and then I found this weird case in her trunk." He held up the metallic object again. "She claims she works for some top-secret government division, but I'm not buying it." Rachel frowned, glancing at the case curiously. "Top-secret division? That sounds unusual." Eric, however, sided with Doyle immediately. "Yeah, right. Another excuse to avoid responsibility. Let's just search the rest of the car and figure this out." Maya felt a surge of frustration. These officers were treating her like a criminal based on nothing more than Doyle's assumptions. She decided it was time to escalate the situation, if only to protect the contents of the case. "Listen to me," she said sharply, addressing all 3 officers now. "That case contains highly sensitive equipment. Opening it without clearance could trigger unforeseen outcomes. I'm telling you this for your own safety." Her warning fell on deaf ears. Doyle and Eric exchanged smirks, clearly dismissing her as paranoid or delusional. Even Rachel seemed hesitant to take her seriously. Feeling cornered, Maya activated a fail-safe device hidden in her watch. Within seconds, a soft hum filled the air, followed by the appearance of 2 drones hovering above the scene. A holographic projection flickered to life, displaying the stern face of Commander Nathan Brooks. "Officers, stand down immediately." The projection boomed in a commanding voice. "This individual is Lieutenant Maya Johnson, operating under federal jurisdiction. Any interference with her duties will be treated as obstruction of justice." The sudden appearance of the drones and the authoritative message stunned everyone present. Doyle stumbled back, nearly dropping the case. "What the hell is this?" he stammered, staring up at the hologram. Commander Brooks continued unperturbed. "Lieutenant Johnson is part of a classified operation essential to national security. You are ordered to cease all actions against her and leave the area promptly." For a moment, no one spoke. The officers exchanged uncertain glances, unsure how to process what they were seeing. Finally, Rachel cleared her throat. Maybe we should follow orders here." "No way," Doyle snapped, regaining some of his bravado. "This has to be fake. There's no way she's actually—" His protest was cut short as the metallic case began emitting a low, rhythmic hum. The glowing symbols grew brighter, pulsing in sync with the sound. Maya's eyes widened in alarm. "Put the case down, now," she shouted, stepping forward. "It's activating." Doyle hesitated, torn between defiance and fear. Before anyone could react, the hum escalated into a high-pitched whine, and a beam of light shot upward from the case. It pierced the night sky, creating a blinding column of energy that illuminated the entire area. Everyone froze, staring in awe at the phenomenon unfolding above them. Moments later, a massive spaceship descended silently from the heavens, casting eerie shadows across the road. Its sleek metallic surface reflected the light of the stars, and its sheer size dwarfed the surrounding trees. The sight was both breathtaking and terrifying. Maya stepped forward, addressing the ship through a wrist-mounted communicator. She spoke in fluent Zyran, a language unfamiliar to the officers. "This is Lieutenant Johnson. Please confirm your intentions." A deep, resonant voice responded in the same alien tongue. Through Maya's translation, the message became clear. "We detect unauthorized activation of our technology. Explain." Maya quickly relayed the situation, explaining that the artifact had been secured until now and apologizing for the disruption. The officers watched in stunned silence, their earlier hostility replaced by disbelief and wonder. Commander Brooks arrived shortly afterward, landing in a helicopter accompanied by a team of ATD agents. He wasted no time taking charge of the situation. "Stand down, all of you," he barked at the local officers. "This matter is far beyond your jurisdiction." Doyle opened his mouth to argue, but thought better of it. For once, his usual arrogance failed him. He stared at the spaceship, then at Maya. realizing for the first time that he might have been wrong about her. But instead of feeling remorse, anger bubbled inside him. How dare she make him look foolish? As the ATD agent secured the scene, Maya turned to Commander Brooks. "Sir, we need to address this immediately. Their ignorance nearly caused a diplomatic incident." Brooks nodded grimly. "Agreed. And these officers need to understand the gravity of their actions." He turned to Doyle, his gaze piercing. "Your bias and incompetence put lives at risk tonight, including yours. Consider yourself lucky this ended peacefully." Doyle clenched his fists but said nothing. For the first time in his career, he felt truly powerless. As the spaceship hovered silently above, waiting for further instructions, Maya couldn't help but reflect on the absurdity of the situation. Here she was, standing between humanity and extraterrestrial beings, while a petty traffic stop spiraled into an intergalactic encounter. It was a stark reminder of how fragile the balance between progress and prejudice truly was. The night was far from over, but one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same. For Maya, for Doyle, or for the world. The spaceship loomed above the highway, its massive form casting a shadow that seemed to stretch endlessly. The local officers, Doyle, Rachel, and Eric, stood frozen, their earlier confidence replaced by wide-eyed disbelief. Even Commander Brooks, who had seen his fair share of extraterrestrial encounters, looked up at the ship with a mix of awe and concern. Maya stepped forward, her wrist-mounted communicator glowing softly as she spoke in fluent Zeran. Her voice was calm, but firm, each word measured to avoid any misunderstanding. "We apologize for the unauthorized activation of your technology," Maya said through the communicator. "It was secured until now, but unforeseen circumstances led to this incident. We assure you it will not happen again." The response came moments later, deep and resonant, echoing in the alien language before Maya translated it aloud for the others. "We accept your explanation. However, we require clarification on the presence of these individuals." A beam of light scanned the group, lingering briefly on Doyle, who flinched instinctively. Commander Brooks stepped beside Maya, addressing the ship directly. "These officers are representatives of Earth's law enforcement. They were unaware of Lieutenant Johnson's status or the nature of the artifact. No harm was intended." Maya could feel the tension in the air. While the Zyrans appeared patient, their advanced technology and imposing presence made it clear they weren't accustomed to such breaches. She knew the situation could escalate quickly if handled improperly. Turning back to the holographic communicator, she added, "If you permit, I will explain further. It is crucial that we maintain trust between our species." The ship responded after a brief pause. "Proceed, but know that continued incidents may strain relations." With the immediate threat of retaliation averted, Maya turned her attention to the officers. Doyle still looked defiant, though there was a flicker of fear in his eyes. Rachel seemed more curious than anything, while Eric mirrored Doyle's hostility, albeit silently. Maya addressed them all, her tone direct, but not unkind. "You've witnessed something few humans ever will," she began. "But understand this. What you saw tonight must remain confidential. Sharing details about this encounter could jeopardize humanity's standing among extraterrestrial civilizations." Doyle scoffed, unable to resist the urge to challenge her. "So now you're telling us what we can and can't say? Who do you think you are?" Before Maya could respond, Commander Brooks interjected, his voice sharp and authoritative. "She's telling you because it's her job, and because failure to comply could lead to severe consequences. Do you really want to risk an interstellar incident over your pride?" For once, Doyle didn't have a comeback. He glanced at the spaceship, then at the drones hovering nearby, and swallowed hard. Whatever bravado he'd felt earlier had evaporated. Still, his resentment simmered beneath the surface. Rachel broke the silence, her tone cautious but sincere. "Look, I don't pretend to understand everything that's happening here. But I get that this is serious. You have my word. I won't say anything." Eric crossed his arms, clearly uncomfortable but unwilling to admit it. "Yeah, fine, whatever. Just tell us what happens next." Commander Brooks nodded approvingly. "Good. Now let's wrap this up. Lieutenant Johnson, secure the artifact. And prepare for transport. Officers, you'll be debriefed later. For now, return to your duties." As the ATD agents moved to retrieve the metallic case, Maya noticed Doyle glaring at her. His expression was a mixture of anger and humiliation, and she couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy. Despite his behavior, she understood that fear often manifested as aggression. Still, that didn't excuse his actions, or the prejudice behind them. Once the artifact was safely stowed, Commander Brooks signaled for the team to leave. Before boarding the helicopter, he gave one final warning to the officers. "Remember this night. Humanity's future depends on how we handle situations like this. Don't let ignorance or bias undermine our progress." With that, the ATD team departed, leaving Doyle, Rachel, and Eric standing alone on the empty road. The spaceship remained suspended in the sky for a moment longer, before ascending silently into the stars, disappearing as quickly as it had arrived. Back at the police station, the atmosphere was tense. Doyle paced back and forth in the break room, muttering under his breath. "Can you believe that? She humiliated me in front of everyone. That woman thinks she's better than us." Rachel leaned against the counter, sipping her coffee. "Kevin, come on, did you see that spaceship? That wasn't some prank. She really is part of something bigger." "Doesn't matter," Doyle snapped. "She played us for fools. And those drones, that hologram, all of it was just to make me look bad." "It wasn't about you," Rachel replied firmly. "You were the one who wouldn't listen. If you'd just accepted her credentials instead of pushing so hard, none of this would have happened." Eric chimed in, shaking his head. "I don't care what anyone says. Something about her story doesn't add up. Classified division? Aliens? Sounds like science fiction to me." Rachel rolled her eyes. "Well, guess what? Science fiction just landed right in front of us. Deal with it." Their argument was interrupted by Captain Lewis entering the room. His expression was grim as he held up a folder. "Internal Affairs wants statements from all of you, starting now." Doyle groaned, sinking into a chair. "Great, just great. Over." The next few hours, the officers recounted the events of the night, each providing their perspective. Doyle downplayed his role, insisting he was only doing his job. Rachel admitted she hadn't known how to react, but emphasized the importance of respecting authority, even unfamiliar ones. Eric stuck to his skepticism, questioning the legitimacy of Maya's claims. Meanwhile, news of the incident spread quickly within the department. Some officers sympathized with Doyle, believing he'd been blindsided by circumstances beyond his control. Others criticized him for letting personal biases cloud his judgment. By morning, the entire precinct was buzzing with rumors about aliens, secret divisions, and the mysterious Lieutenant Johnson. As the days passed, Doyle found himself struggling to move past the encounter. Every time he thought about Maya's calm demeanor, or the way she'd outmaneuvered him, his frustration grew. He replayed the night in his mind, searching for ways he could have handled things differently. But no matter how many scenarios he imagined, the outcome always came back to the same conclusion. He'd been wrong. Rachel tried to reach out to him, offering advice. "Kevin, maybe this is a chance to learn something. You've always been so sure of yourself, but sometimes it pays to listen first and act later." Doyle brushed her off. "Easy for you to say. You weren't the one standing there looking like an idiot." But deep down, he knew she was right. The memory of the spaceship lingered in his mind, haunting him. He couldn't shake the feeling that he'd missed an opportunity, not just to prove himself, but to grow as a person. Elsewhere, Maya returned to her duties, filing reports and attending debriefings. Though relieved the situation had ended peacefully, she couldn't ignore the underlying issues it highlighted. Humanity's readiness to engage with extraterrestrial life depended not only on technological advancement, but also on overcoming prejudices and fostering mutual respect. One evening, as she sat in her apartment reviewing the night's events, Maya received a message from Commander Brooks. "Good work out there," it read. "But remember, diplomacy starts at home. Keep pushing for change." Maya smiled faintly, knowing the road ahead would be long and challenging. But she also knew that every step mattered, no matter how small. The days following the incident were tense for everyone involved. Doyle spent most of his time avoiding eye contact with his colleagues, especially Rachel and Eric. The weight of what had happened pressed heavily on him, though he refused to admit it out loud. Every time someone mentioned aliens or spaceships, even jokingly, he felt a surge of irritation. He convinced himself that Maya Johnson had orchestrated the entire event to humiliate him, but deep down, he knew better. The spaceship hadn't been staged. It was real, and that knowledge gnawed at him. Rachel, on the other hand, couldn't stop thinking about the encounter. She replayed every detail in her mind: the metallic case, the glowing symbols, the massive ship descending from the sky. It all seemed surreal, like something out of a movie, but it wasn't fiction. It had happened right in front of her. What struck her most was how calm Maya had remained throughout the chaos. Even when Doyle was being aggressive, even when the artifact started emitting light, Maya never lost her composure. Rachel admired that kind of strength under pressure. She wondered if she would have reacted the same way. Eric tried to brush off the whole thing as nonsense, but his skepticism was starting to crack. Late at night, lying in bed, he found himself staring at the ceiling, wondering if maybe, just maybe, he'd witnessed something extraordinary. Still, pride kept him from admitting it to anyone else. Instead, he doubled down on his criticism of Maya, muttering about government conspiracies whenever the topic came up. Meanwhile, internal investigations into Doyle's conduct began. Complaints had been filed, not just by Maya, but also by Rachel, who believed Doyle's behavior during the traffic stop crossed ethical boundaries. Captain Lewis called Doyle into his office one afternoon, his expression unreadable. "Kevin, you know why you're here," Lewis said, leaning back in his chair. "There are serious allegations against you. Bias, excessive force, refusal to acknowledge legitimate credentials." Doyle shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Captain, I was just doing my job. That woman, Maya Johnson, she didn't belong in that neighborhood. I had every right to question her." Lewis sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "That's not how it works, Kevin. You can't profile people based on where they live or what car they drive. And you definitely can't ignore federal identification because you don't recognize it." "She played us for fools," Doyle exclaimed, slamming his fist on the desk. "That whole spaceship thing, it could have been fake. How do we even know it was real?" "It doesn't matter whether it was real or not," Lewis replied sharply. "What matters is how you handled yourself. Your actions put this department in a bad light. Worse, they put lives at risk. Do you understand that?" Doyle clenched his jaw but said nothing. He knew Lewis was right, but accepting responsibility felt impossible. Admitting fault meant confronting truths about himself that he wasn't ready to face. At the Advanced Tactical Division, ATD, Maya submitted her report to Commander Brooks. She detailed every moment of the traffic stop, from Doyle's initial suspicion to the arrival of the Zyran spaceship. Brooks listened intently, nodding occasionally, but keeping his thoughts to himself until she finished. "You did well, Lieutenant," he said finally. "But situations like this highlight a bigger problem. Humanity isn't ready for first contact. Not yet. Not while prejudice and ignorance still divide us." Maya nodded slowly. "I agree, sir. But incidents like these can serve as wake-up calls. People need to see the consequences of their biases, not just for themselves but for humanity as a whole." Brooks leaned forward, resting his elbows on his desk. "Exactly. Which is why I want you to participate in a public awareness initiative. We're organizing a series of events aimed at educating communities about extraterrestrial diplomacy. Your story could be a powerful tool." Maya hesitated. Sharing her experience meant exposing herself to scrutiny, possibly even ridicule. But she also understood the importance of bridging gaps between humans and aliens. "If it helps prevent future misunderstandings, I'll do it," she said firmly. Weeks later, news of the incident leaked to the media. Headlines screamed about close encounters and secret government divisions. Most articles focused on the mysterious spaceship, speculating wildly about its origins and purpose. Some praised Maya as a hero, while others questioned the legitimacy of her claims. Doyle's name appeared in a few reports, often accompanied by accusations of racial profiling. The backlash was swift and brutal. Doyle received angry phone calls and messages from strangers calling him out for his behavior. His social media accounts were flooded with comments labeling him as ignorant and prejudiced. For the first time in his life, he felt truly isolated. Friends distanced themselves, unsure of how to defend him. Even his family expressed disappointment, urging him to reflect on his actions. One evening, sitting alone in his apartment, Doyle stared at the TV screen as another news segment aired footage of Maya speaking at a press conference. She stood, confidently, answering questions about the incident with grace and poise. When asked about Doyle, she chose her words carefully. "Officer Doyle made mistakes, yes, but he's not unique in that regard," she said. "Many people struggle with bias, often without realizing it. My hope is that this incident serves as a learning opportunity for him, for law enforcement, and for society as a whole." Her words hit Doyle harder than any insult ever could. For the first time, he saw her not as an adversary, but as someone trying to create understanding. It was a perspective he hadn't considered before. Rachel decided to take action as well. Inspired by Maya's courage, she began advocating for reforms within the police department. She proposed mandatory training sessions on cultural sensitivity and implicit bias, emphasizing the importance of treating everyone equally, regardless of background. Though some officers resisted the idea, many supported her efforts, recognizing the need for change. Eric, however, remained stubbornly resistant. He mocked Rachel's initiatives, accusing her of being naive. "You think a few workshops are going to fix centuries of problems?" He sneered. "Give me a break." Rachel didn't let his negativity deter her. "Maybe it won't solve everything," she shot back. "But doing nothing guarantees nothing changes. At least I'm trying." As weeks turned into months, the impact of the incident rippled outward. Doyle faced disciplinary action, including suspension and mandatory counseling. While initially resentful, he gradually began to open up during therapy sessions, confronting the biases he'd long ignored. It was a painful process, but it marked the beginning of personal growth. Maya continued her work with the ATD, traveling across the country to speak at schools, community centers, and government offices. Her message was simple, yet profound. Humanity's survival depended not only on technological advancement but also on unity and empathy. Each speech reinforced her belief that change was possible, one person at a time. And then there were the Zyrans. Though their visit had been brief, their presence lingered in the minds of those who had witnessed it. They had come searching for answers, curious about Earth's readiness to join the galactic community. What they found was a species still grappling with its own flaws, but also capable of remarkable resilience and hope. For Maya, the road ahead was clear. There would be challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But she knew that progress, no matter how slow, was worth fighting for. As she gazed up at the stars one quiet evening, she allowed herself a small smile. Humanity might not be perfect, but it was learning, and that was enough. Months had passed since the night of the traffic stop, but its effects lingered like ripples in a pond. Doyle's suspension was lifted after he completed several weeks of sensitivity training and counseling sessions. Yet returning to work wasn't easy. His colleagues treated him differently, some with pity, others with thinly veiled disdain. Even Eric, who once shared his skepticism, avoided eye contact when they crossed paths in the hallway. The weight of public opinion pressed down on him, making every shift feel heavier than the last. Doyle tried to convince himself that things would eventually go back to normal. He told himself that people would forget, that time would heal the wounds caused by the incident. But deep down, he knew better. This wasn't something that could be erased or ignored. It clung to him like a shadow, reminding him daily of the choices he'd made and the biases he'd refused to confront. One evening, as he sat alone in his patrol car during a slow shift, his thoughts drifted back to Maya Johnson. He replayed their encounter over and over in his mind. The way she'd remained calm despite his hostility. The quiet strength in her voice when she warned him about the artifact. He wondered what she thought of him now. Did she see him as just another prejudiced cop, or did she believe he could change? His musings were interrupted by a knock on the window. Startled, he looked up to see Rachel standing outside, holding 2 cups of coffee. She motioned for him to roll down the window. "Thought you might need this," she said, handing him one of the cups. "It's getting cold out here." Doyle hesitated before taking it. "Thanks," he muttered, avoiding her gaze. He didn't know how to act around her anymore. Since the incident, Rachel had become an advocate for reform within the department, pushing for changes that Doyle initially resisted. Her determination made him uncomfortable, forcing him to confront truths he preferred to ignore. "You doing okay?" Rachel asked, leaning against the car. "Fine," Doyle replied curtly. "Just another boring night." Rachel studied him for a moment, then sighed. "Look, Kevin, I know things have been tough for you, but maybe instead of shutting everyone out, you could try, I don't know, talking about it? Opening up?" "I'm not really in the mood for a heart-to-heart," Doyle said, his tone sharp. "Besides, you wouldn't understand." "Try me," Rachel countered, crossing her arms. "Because from where I'm standing, you're letting this eat away at you. And honestly, it's exhausting watching you dig yourself deeper into denial." Doyle opened his mouth to argue, but stopped short. There was no point denying it, she was right. For weeks, he'd buried his feelings under layers of anger and self-pity, refusing to acknowledge the damage he'd done. Now, faced with Rachel's blunt honesty, he felt the walls he'd built around himself begin to crack. "I screwed up, okay?" he admitted finally, his voice low. "I let my pride get in the way. I judged her before I even gave her a chance. And now—" He trailed off, shaking his head. "Now I don't even recognize myself." Rachel softened, her expression turning sympathetic. "We all make mistakes, Kevin. What matters is what you do next. Are you going to keep blaming everyone else, or are you going to take responsibility and grow?" Her words struck a chord. Doyle stared into his coffee cup, thinking about everything that had happened since that fateful night. The media scrutiny, the loss of respect from his peers, the sleepless nights spent replaying the incident in his mind. It all boiled down to one thing: accountability. If he wanted to move forward, he needed to start owning his actions. Meanwhile, Maya continued her efforts to educate the public about extraterrestrial diplomacy. Her speeches drew large crowds, ranging from curious students to skeptical government officials. Each presentation was tailored to her audience, blending scientific facts with personal anecdotes to drive home the importance of unity and understanding. At one event held in a community center near Chicago, Maya addressed a packed auditorium. "When I stood face to face with Officer Doyle that night, I saw more than just prejudice. I saw fear," she explained. "Fear of the unknown, fear of change, fear of losing control. These emotions aren't unique to him. They exist in all of us, but we can't let them dictate our actions." The crowd listened intently, captivated by her words. A young woman raised her hand during the Q&A session. "What can ordinary people like us do to help prepare for first contact?" she asked. Maya smiled warmly. "Start by listening. Listen to those who are different from you, not just their words, but their stories, their struggles. Empathy is the foundation of diplomacy. Without it, we'll never truly connect, not with each other, and certainly not with beings from beyond our world." Her answer earned applause, but Maya knew that true progress required more than applause. It demanded action. That's why she partnered with organizations focused on combating systemic racism and promoting inclusivity. Together, they launched initiatives aimed at fostering dialogue between communities, often divided by mistrust and misunderstanding. Commander Brooks supported her efforts wholeheartedly. "You're planting seeds, Lieutenant," he told her one day after reviewing her latest project proposal. "Seeds that may not bear fruit immediately, but will someday grow into something meaningful." Maya appreciated his encouragement, though she remained realistic about the challenges ahead. Change wouldn't happen overnight. Prejudice ran deep, and dismantling it would take time, effort, and unwavering commitment. Still, she found hope in the small victories. A teenager inspired to pursue a career in science, a teacher incorporating lessons on diversity into their curriculum, a neighbor reaching out to someone they'd previously dismissed. Back at the police station, reforms were slowly taking shape. Rachel's advocacy led to the implementation of mandatory cultural sensitivity training for all officers. The program included workshops, role-playing exercises, and guest speakers sharing their experiences with bias and discrimination. While some officers embraced the initiative, others resisted, viewing it as unnecessary or overly political. Eric fell into the latter category. Despite Rachel's best efforts to include him, he remained openly critical of the changes. "This isn't about improving policing," he grumbled during one particularly heated discussion. "It's about pandering to special interest groups." Rachel fixed him with a steely glare. "If you think treating people fairly is pandering, then maybe you're in the wrong line of work." Their argument escalated until Captain Lewis intervened, ordering them to focus on their duties rather than bickering. Afterward, Rachel pulled Eric aside, determined to reach him. "Why are you so against this?" she asked, her tone softer, but still firm. "What are you afraid of?" "I'm not afraid of anything," Eric snapped. "I just don't see why we have to waste time on this nonsense when there are real problems to deal with. Maybe if we address the root causes of those problems, we won't have to deal with them as often," Rachel countered. "Think about it, Eric. Every time we fail to treat someone with respect, we lose trust, and without trust, we can't protect anyone. Not them, not ourselves." Eric didn't respond, but the flicker of doubt in his eyes told Rachel she'd planted a seed. Whether it would grow remained to be seen. As winter approached, the city prepared for its annual Peace Summit, a gathering of leaders from various fields dedicated to fostering harmony and cooperation. Maya was invited to speak alongside Commander Brooks, representing the ATD. The event attracted international attention, drawing attendees from across the globe. On the day of the summit, Maya stood backstage, nervously reviewing her notes. As she glanced at the audience filling the hall, she spotted familiar faces. Rachel, sitting near the front with a group of fellow officers, and surprisingly, Doyle, seated toward the back. Their presence filled her with a mix of apprehension and hope. When her turn came, Maya stepped onto the stage, greeted by polite applause. She began her speech by recounting the events of the traffic stop, acknowledging both the failures and the lessons learned. "That night taught me something important," she concluded. "Change doesn't come from perfection. It comes from imperfection. From recognizing our flaws and working together to overcome them. Only then can we build a future worthy of humanity's potential." The room erupted in applause, and Maya allowed herself a small smile. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed Doyle nodding slowly, as if finally understanding. It was a small gesture, but it meant more to her than she could put into words. As the summit drew to a close, Maya mingled with attendees, answering questions and exchanging ideas. When she reached Doyle, he hesitated before speaking. "Lieutenant Johnson," he began awkwardly. I wanted to say thank you for everything." Maya met his gaze, seeing sincerity in his eyes. "Thank you for listening," she replied simply. "That's the first step." And with that, they parted ways, each carrying a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead was long, but together they, and countless others, were beginning to pave the way toward a brighter, more united future. The months that followed the Peace Summit brought subtle but significant changes to the lives of those involved. For Doyle, the shift was slow and difficult, like turning a heavy ship against the current. He began attending community meetings, organized by Rachel, where residents voiced concerns about police conduct. At first, he sat quietly in the back, arms crossed, feeling out of place. But as he listened to stories from people who had been mistreated or misunderstood, something inside him started to soften. One evening, after a particularly emotional meeting, an older black man approached him. "You're the one who pulled over that officer, aren't you?" the man asked, his tone more curious than accusatory. Doyle nodded reluctantly, bracing himself for criticism. "Yeah, that was me." The man studied him for a moment before speaking. Again. "I saw her on TV talking about it. She didn't badmouth you even though she could have. That took guts on both sides." Doyle blinked, surprised by the comment. "I don't know if I deserve credit for anything," he admitted. "I messed up big time." The man chuckled softly. "Mistakes are part of life. What matters is whether you learn from them." With that, he patted Doyle on the shoulder and walked away, leaving Doyle to ponder the weight of his words. Over time, Doyle became more active in these meetings, sharing his own struggles with bias and accountability. It wasn't easy. He often stumbled over his words or felt defensive when challenged, but he kept showing up. Slowly, trust began to rebuild between him and the community. Some still viewed him with suspicion, but others acknowledged his efforts, recognizing that change required patience and effort from everyone. For Rachel, the reforms within the department gained momentum. Her advocacy inspired colleagues to join her cause, and soon a coalition formed, dedicated to creating a fairer and more inclusive force. They introduced new protocols for traffic stops, emphasizing de-escalation and respect. Training sessions focused not only on technical skills but also on empathy and communication. Eric remained resistant at first, dismissing the initiatives as unnecessary distractions. But one day, during a routine patrol, he encountered a situation that forced him to reconsider. A young black teenager had been reported loitering near a convenience store late at night. When Eric arrived, he found the boy sitting on the curb, visibly nervous. Instead of jumping straight into questioning, Eric remembered one of Rachel's lessons. Treat people as individuals, not stereotypes. He knelt beside the boy and asked, calmly, "Hey, what's going on here? Are you okay?" The boy hesitated before explaining that he'd lost his keys and was waiting for his mom to pick him up. Eric helped him search the area until they found the keys tucked under a nearby bench. As the boy thanked him, relief washing over his face, Eric realized how different the interaction might have gone if he hadn't taken the time to listen. From that point forward, Eric began participating in the training programs, no longer seeing them as optional. Though he still struggled with some aspects, his willingness to adapt earned him newfound respect among his peers. Maya continued her work with the ATD, traveling across the country to promote understanding between humans and extraterrestrial beings. Her speeches resonated with audiences, inspiring many to rethink their assumptions about diversity and inclusion. She often received letters from listeners thanking her for opening their eyes to perspectives they hadn't considered before. One such letter came from a high school teacher in Ohio. "Your talk made me realize how much our curriculum focuses on Earth-centric history," the teacher wrote. "I've started incorporating lessons about potential alien civilizations and the importance of interstellar diplomacy. My students love it." Maya smiled as she read the note, grateful for the impact her words were having. Still, she knew there was much work to be done. Humanity's readiness for first contact depended not only on technological advancements, but also on overcoming deeply ingrained prejudices. Every speech, every workshop, every conversation brought them closer to that goal. But the journey was far from over. Commander Brooks supported her tirelessly, often reminding her to take breaks and care for herself. "You can't pour from an empty cup, Lieutenant," he said one evening after a long day of presentations. "Remember why you're doing this. It's not just about fixing problems, it's about building bridges." Maya nodded, appreciating his wisdom. "Sometimes it feels overwhelming," she admitted. "Like we're trying to hold back a flood with our bare hands." "And sometimes," Brooks replied, "all it takes is one small step to change the course of a river." As spring approached, the city hosted another event, a celebration honoring individuals who had contributed to fostering peace between humans and extraterrestrials. Maya attended alongside Commander Brooks, wearing her dress uniform with pride. The ceremony was held outdoors, under a clear sky dotted with stars. Attendees included scientists, diplomats, government officials, and even representatives from the Zyrans. During the program, Maya was awarded a medal for her role in preventing misunderstandings during the spaceship incident. As she accepted the honor, she scanned the crowd, spotting familiar faces. Rachel, smiling warmly, Doyle, standing tall despite his earlier insecurities, and even Eric, clapping along with the rest. Their presence reminded her of how far they'd all come since that tense night on the highway. In her acceptance speech, Maya reflected on the lessons learned. We live in a world full of differences, different cultures, beliefs, and experiences, she said. But those differences don't have to divide us. They can enrich us, teach us, and help us grow. Whether we're reaching across the table or across the stars, the key is always the same: empathy. Her words drew a standing ovation, and as she stepped off the stage, Rachel approached her. That was beautiful, Rachel said, extending her hand. Thank you for everything you've done. For us, for humanity. Maya shook her hand firmly. Thank you for believing in me, and for pushing for change when it mattered most. Later, Doyle approached her, his demeanor noticeably less guarded than before. Lieutenant Johnson, he began, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I hope someday you can forgive me. Maya looked at him, seeing not the angry, biased officer from months ago, but a man genuinely striving to improve. You've already taken the first step toward forgiveness, she told him gently. Keep moving forward. Their brief exchange ended with a nod of mutual respect, symbolizing not just personal growth but collective progress. That night, as the festivities wound down, Maya stood outside, gazing up at the stars. Commander Brooks joined her, following her gaze. What are you thinking about? He asked. The future, Maya replied. Ours and theirs. She gestured toward the heavens. It's hard to imagine what lies ahead, but I believe we're ready. Not because we're perfect, but because we're willing to try, Brooks smiled. Well said, Lieutenant, well said. As they stood together, bathed in moonlight, Maya felt a sense of cautious optimism. Humanity had its flaws, yes, but it also possessed resilience, curiosity, and hope. Those qualities would carry them forward, guiding them toward a future where unity, not division, defined their place in the universe. And somewhere beyond the stars, the Zirans watched silently, their glowing eyes reflecting the same mix of caution and wonder. Perhaps, they thought, this peculiar species was worth getting to know after all.